Good afternoon, colleagues. The UCMC continues its work. The process of creating able communities and decentralization is going on in Ukraine, but for some communities this process was blocked. Last week, the Central Election Committee refused in appointing the elections for 28 united communities. 350,000 people live in these communities, and there are already claims submitted to the court, and some communities received this refusal for the second time. There are communities where the elections have not been appointed for more than a year after the communities were united. We will try to find out whether this refusal of the Central Election Committee, what is it? Is it the following the requirements of the law, or is that the political game, or maybe it's something else? And we'll be looking for the answers together with the Mykola Antoshyk, the mayor of Pomichna, town Ostap Yednak, the MP of Ukraine, also Anatoliy Martyniuk, the village head of Krasnopilka, Vinnytsia region, and Anton Sobolivskyi, the representative of Voyutychi Village Council in Lviv region, and he's the assistant to Yuri Derevyanka, the MP. There was a court hearings yesterday, and it was about Voyutychi Village Council. We don't have the representative of Central Election Committee with us, even though we invited them insistently to that press conference. So, Mykola, could you please tell us why in Pomichna the elections are not appointed? Is it the first time? How does it affect the united community? Can you develop further without having such a resolution? Our community, well, it looks like decentralization was created for our community, the citizens of our town and of the village Pomichna. They wanted to create this community as soon as possible. We were almost the first ones who started the process. We prepared all the documents and we sent via regional administration to Central Election Committee. We first received the refusal because they mentioned that different our villages are in different districts of the region. Then we, for the second time, addressed the Central Election Committee. We're waiting for the second reply, the community that wants changes. And we have this opportunity to create a self-sufficient community. People are waiting for the elections, are looking forward for that. We believe there were no grounds for the CEC to refuse. I've been addressing the MPs so that they pay attention to such communities as we, so that they help to pass the draft law 4676, which is about this situation. I understand that united community is town Pomichna, which Pomichnyanska village council of Novoukrayinsky district, and the previous one is of a different district. So now you have united, and the merger took place, but how do you function? Do you function as two separate authorities? We function as separate centers of self-governance, but the town has Kotyubinsky Street. One side of the street is Novoukrayinsky district, another side of the same street is Dobrovolitchkivsky district. when in times of in Soviet times they were not thinking and they did it like that, but today we are one single community, and we need to form our community this way. What is the situation in your community, Anatoly? The law on uniting the communities allowed the unification of village councils and of settlements which are in different districts. So we step aside from the Soviet model and we want to go back to organic formations, communities. What unification took place in your community and how does it affect the appointment of the elections? The process of unification was difficult. To change the limits of the district, it's like people were used to go to one place to resolve different issues, but now they had to go to a different place. It was difficult to convince them, but they see that we have more perspectives and people understand it. Another issue is with the administration of the adjacent district. But the decision was made by village councils. We asked different people, 2-3 persons would go to different houses, and 90% voted for. And the deputies of the council passed the decision to join the community. But now people are asking, they call me every day. It's not from our district, but from adjacent district. They call me and they ask, what do we do next? And I have no answer to that. I have nothing to tell them. In 2 weeks, hopefully the law will be passed in the second reading about changing of the limits of the district. But Anatoly, could you help? The community decided to reform, and these are the communities which are pioneers. They show that decentralization is possible and what successes it can bring. I understand that it was not easy to convince the citizens. There were probably different positions. Could it happen so that the citizens will refuse to implement these reforms, and they will say, okay, once the elections are not appointed, we'll go back to the previous system? I don't think this will happen. People have changed their views, their convictions, and some were at Maidan, and people are different, not those which not like they were before 1940, before 2014. So the community will be fighting for their rights, right?
Whether you plan to file a claim to court as other communities, we haven't made this decision yet. We have to sit together with the leaders of the villages and decide whether we will do this together. Mr. Anton, yesterday you represented a Voyutychi Council in court. Will you please describe the proceedings, whether there were representatives of the Central Election Commission, and what is your expectations as to the possible result of this court proceedings? Yes, yesterday there was court proceedings in response to our claim with Yuri Derevyanka, and Yesterday there was a preliminary hearings. Central Election Commission submitted its explanation based on the current law. Position there is well known. This is a general rejection to announce elections in the United Communities. The only explanation is that the parts of the newly united communities belong to different administrative subdivisions, to different districts within one region, and in response to this objection, we presented our vision of the situation and suggested that position of the Central Election Commission is illegal because in legislation, in current Ukrainian legislation, there is no indication that the elections could not be held in different administrative units, and instead of this, in Ukrainian legislation, Verkhovna Rada could announce any local elections as it believes are necessary. And also we presented that we complied with all necessary requirements set for united communities. And I asked a question, why in the fall of 2015 the law was passed about uniting communities and non-holding of elections. First was brought into agenda later in January 2016, and actually we do not see any grounds for Central Election Commission to hamper the elections. How do you think, what is the real reason for non-compliance with the legislation? I think that since the Election Commission is limited with purely technical issues, because when there are elections to the united communities, then lists of elections are stored in different files and in different databases, in different districts of the same region. And thus, it is inconvenient for Central Election Commission to merge two different districts and lists of voters. As far as I understand, your position in court is as follows: that when there is a united community, different parts of which belong to different administrative districts, this should not entail further changing of the borders of the districts, part of which are united into one community. So do you think that it should not be done in general, or alternatively we should pass a special law which will change the administrative boundaries of the districts within one region? Thank you for this very good question. Today, I presented the problem that communities themselves were suggested to develop a procedure how to change the boundaries of the districts, but we do not think in general that this should be done. The change in the local self-governance body, which is established in result of united community, actually does not influence the plot of the does not influence the current situation. Because when within one district several communities reform, reshape their sizes, then different, quite often they are, this is actually the same what we experienced in our case. The draft law, which might be passed and which you mentioned, it simply sets the rules for the oblast state administration and establishes the procedure that the oblast should submit to the cabinet of ministers a request about changing the subordination of the community, while change of boundaries of one district is very expensive, is very cumbersome, and I do not think that we should do this now, and equally this problem will not be resolved by the draft law that you mentioned. So, Yuri Derevyanka and me, we discussed this issue, and we developed that legal solution which we offered. Now we applied to court with our claims to get court decisions supporting and forcing the Central Election Commission to appoint the elections. We believe that in result of that positive court decision in favor of the United Communities elections, Central Election Commission will be forced to change its decision. Sometimes Central Election Commission refers to the constitutional provisions which points out that we should change the constitution first, and this problem could not be resolved by the passage of the new draft law, as you mentioned it. Thank you, Anton. And the last question to you. What is your forecast when first court decisions may appear?
I hope this will be next sitting of the court on the case of the Village Council versus the Central Election Committee. Before that, only this case was appointed. There's another claim we submitted from Sashanska Village Council, but there was no, but they have not even appointed the first sitting of the court, and I talked to two more communities which submitted the claims. Gostomilskaya, they went to a different court now. They went to the one that has to consider the case, and another community submitted the claim, filed the claim, but the sitting hasn't been appointed. I hope that the 1st of November there will be the court will consider the case, and I believe that even though if the court satisfies our claim, the Central Election Committee will be against it. When the legislator was approving the law on merging communities, they believe that the limits of the districts are not to be changed. But do you believe, have you passed the laws or did you believe when passing the laws there will be such problems that the communities that want to get united, to merge, will be communities from different districts? In fact, it wasn't difficult to foresee that the obstacle to reforms will be this body, Central Election Committee. We are working with local population, with local administrations, but when there is the will of people to get united, when there is the substantiation of these decisions, the Central Election Committee is to be the instrument here. But instead of being such an instrument, they get interfered with the politics, they start inventing things, and I believe that the internal procedures are to be resolved, and the community should receive the right to hold the elections. It looks like the body doesn't care about what the local citizens want, and they will need to get all the additional dividends that they receive. There are now fantastic opportunities for merging the communities, but now we see that 28 communities lose this opportunity. They have to go to the court and defend their rights. That's an awful example. The mentality of people has changed after 2014, but we see the demonstration that the Central Election Committee hasn't changed, and the logic of work of this body, which existed till 2014, is the same. It's of all the authorities, and here we need to make conclusions in the parliament. We don't see political will to renew the Central Election Committee composition. I believe that the reforms like e-declaration or energy regulator, they are to be implemented despite the political will. Maybe we need to start shouting that the Central Election Committee is to be changed because it's semi-legitimate itself. I remember that in Samopomic faction we suggested one candidate and nothing was done. This example is a demonstration of how imperfect the work of Central Election Committee is. That is the symptom of the disease of our authorities, and we need to address it. Thank you, Ostap. And another question on application of laws. The law on Central Election Committee Article 6 says that the term of power of the member of Central Election Committee is 6 years. This term has expired. And from the legal point of view, from the point of view, political point of view, how do you assess the situation? You say that the Central Election Committee is semi-legitimate, but we don't have any other Central Election Committee. And the mandate that they're using, on the one hand, we have this mandate, on the other hand, We have the situation when the communities following the law on merging, the communities are getting merged and the law allows that, and these are communities from different districts. There's some discrepancy here. So what to do with that norm? The term of power of the member of CEC is 7 years. We have many bodies where supervisory boards and commissions, their terms have expired in the banks and state banks. And this is the situation that satisfies all political forces because they understand who works and how they work. When we had the additional elections to the Verkhovna Rada, there were many violations, and the CEC probably does not react to all that properly. The fact that the CEC is not re-elected means that the parliament and the political forces are happy with this situation. How to change it? The international community, the just civil society are to press here. And we need to talk to lawyers on constitutional law to understand what's happening from the legal point of view. Mykola, as I understand, we see two scenarios that can change the situation. One, that the decision may be made for the benefit of one communities, and this will be the precedent which will force the CEC to appoint the elections. And another one, well, there is a draft law in the Verkhovna Rada that will probably help to address the situation. Which of these options is most probable, and what would be further actions if neither of them will be implemented? The situation is the situation of absurd. The CEC expired, so to say, in June last year, and they have no powers to decide what should happen to 350,000 people who are ready for changes. I believe these people shouldn't be working and they shouldn't be defining the future of such communities as we are. But we got refusal, and so we will wait for what happens after the court sittings. If this doesn't work, then via the MPs we'll be thinking about what to do next. The money was allocated for dividing, but the districts now lost their Soviet powers. But once we need to divide, there should be money for that. We need to divide, and we need to help the communities to move forward. How long is this process of changing the limits of the districts? No one knows exactly how much money is needed for that.
Одні називають, що зовсім небагато, інші називають, що великі цифри, є і 5 мільйонів.
There are 5 million, people quote 5 million less, but for the country which wants changes, wants reforms, this is not money. And we need to find this money, we need to help the communities. And everyone says that reforms are not implemented, but the financial decentralization helps us. So we have all the prospects to develop. The community which is created on the basis of a village and our town is highly prospective. 70% of the budget of the region comes from our town. People who live and wait for the reform, they believe that it's all for us. We want the reforms, we are looking forward to reforms, Central Election Committee should closer communicate and should realistically examine the situation in every community. We want the reforms. Mykola, could you specify? You say that financial decentralization brings new possibilities for local authorities, but what changes have taken place in Pomichna, in other settlements? You know, the Cabinet of Ministers, the Verkhovna Rada, the presidential administration are not paying enough attention to that, but we need to demonstrate it. I have been the city head, the town head of the second term, but every month we have more money coming to the budget, and we use this money to improve the situation in the town. Everyone feels it. We can see it looking at roads, looking at our schools and kindergartens. If a few years ago it was a problem to pay salaries, to budget institutions, now we are doing it. And the work with the Treasury, when for many years we were trying the Treasury to pay us timely, we waited for months so that they pay faster. We were looking for different ways so that our invoices are paid. But now, if the documents are supplied and they are all correct, then in 3 days all the payments are made. The entrepreneurs believe us, and we will pay it all. But we could not even pay for the gasoline a few years ago. Now we have no problem like that. That is a huge success of financial decentralization. Anatoly, could you please tell whether you could see financial decentralization in Krasnopilka? Do people see it? And what are the results?
I've been working in this position almost a year. I did not witness any delays with the payment of treasury the payments of our bills, which went through the treasury, but I could assess our budget as one of the biggest ones among neighboring districts. We have very good companies on our territory, like Mironev Хлібопродукт company, and we pay. We always pay on time. We always have sufficient budget to maintain ourselves, and we pay huge, and we have good revenues from the from local taxes. When we led our unification campaign, we promised our neighboring villages that we will be able to support some smaller villages financially from our budget. And I wish to your communities that the issue which you have now won't become a serious obstacle anymore. Now we have Yuri Ganushak, who joined us. He is a key expert in decentralization. Yuri, will you describe very briefly comment very briefly on the situation. We have a court claim, and we expect to have court decisions soon. And the draft law which we have in the Verkhovna Rada, and the third aspect, the third option which we discussed today, that probably the local communities will need to change the boundaries of the districts before the local communities will be allowed to get united in reality. Thank you for your question. I do not take into account the third scenario which you described. I think that those communities which decided to get united and now are waiting for 6 months for the Verkhovna Rada decision. The Constitution says clearly that self-governance comes from the basic level, the village council. And the district community is a bit higher. So from the decentralization point of view, that first basic level is the main one. And the legislator, when repealed part 7 of the Article 7, which said now it's the legislation says that the decision about unification is the final one, and it cannot be repealed. All the rest issues are just technical issues. So when the primary decision about unification of the community is made, all the rest bodies should work to overcome technical details. I think that current decision of the Central Election Commission is just political, and they wishes to become members of the Central Election Commission again, and thus they have started political games and political schemes. Actually, the issue about establishing the boundaries of the districts is nonsense, because we do not have any document, any official document, setting official boundaries of the districts. When we look at the functioning of local self-government authorities, when central election
орган влади, який має інші трошки повноваження, ніж ті, які кругом є. Але воно входить в межі району. Тому з цієї точки зору дії ЦВК абсолютно нелогічні. Але ми зараз, от я голову слухав, я розумію його побоювання.
Listening to Mr. Martyniuk, I understand his concerns that actually they spent a year uniting people, convincing them that that union is very useful, and now Central Election Commission wishes to put an end to this process. That's why we will suggest in Verkhovna Rada that that final provisions to some laws which are about administrative division, they will be amended.
Без цього.
Відсотків тільки відповідає перспективному плану. Всі інші, декілька громад не захотіли приєднатися, і тепер треба ламати, міняти перспективний план, причому деякі з них конфігурації абсолютно нелогічні. І, звичайно, Кабінет міністрів не зможе прийняти ці конфігурації. Саме через те ми до прикінцевих положень хочемо дописати таку норму, що у випадку, якщо вибори оголошені до прийняття закону про державний бюджет, то в такому разі міжбюджетні трансферти будуть враховуватися.
Also, we will make an amendment that if elections in the United Communities will be announced before the passage of the law on the state budget for the second year, but in case it happens, we will insist that the results of the elections will be taken into consideration in the next budget year. But if elections will be appointed for January or February, then after February or after first quarter of the next year, the local communities will have the united budgets and united transfers from the state budget. Actually, now the success of the entire decentralization depends on that two draft laws, number 4676 and 4772, about transfers, budget transfers, and the law number 4773 about amendments to the state budget code. And I hope that the Verkhovna Rada will pass or amend the draft laws at least in early November before the law on the state budget is passed. Dear colleagues, any questions? Юліана Паксюткіна, народний депутат Magazine. It seems to me that we could not expect much from the court. The judges apply for dismissal every day, and don't you think that you should include into your claim the request for personal responsibility of the Central Election Commission members? Once we applied to court and against the Central Election Commission and lost. Now, I think
When it was the gray zone, the EC could say, we operate according to Article 19 and we interpret the Constitution ourselves. But they have no right to interpret the Constitution. They had no explanations. Now they received explanations from the Verkhovna Rada, which clearly states the impossibility not to announce the elections, because that contradicts the Constitution. That is how the position was stated. The self-governance is the right of the communities. And now when there is the explanation of the CEC, The judicial perspectives are more than positive. We're not interested in when this will be passed. We're interested in the precedent. The body that considered itself to be one that cannot be punished, now they will stop being political body, which makes decisions based on political feasibility, because their arguments are quite political and not legal. As to the personal participation, that's the collegial body, and it could be stopped only by other authorities, in this case by judicial power. That's the only legal way. Thank you. Anton? And one more thing, the explanation of the committee of Verkhovna Rada existed. I also would like to say about the successes, myself and the team of people, of the team of the MP Derevyanka, we appealed against and we won the court. If you prepare the claim well, and I believe we prepared it well, referring to the explanation of the committee of the Verkhovna Rada, there are prospects. And the main thing, if we analyze the resolutions of the CEC that they use for refusal, then we understand that the CEC voluntarily interprets the norms of the Constitution. And that is why I believe that the professional lawyers, they will be able to analyze and to give a proper assessment to what's happening. I don't see any options not to satisfy the claim. What the CEC writes in their resolutions, it's not in the Constitution. We have time for one question and very short answer. My question is to the village head and the town head. What would you like to tell to the leadership of the CEC? I would like to say to the CEC, don't hamper the reforms in Ukraine. Say stop to your ambitions. Listen to communities. There are more than 360,000 people. We made our decision. We are separate, united communities, and you have to listen to us. They have to be closer to people. They should go to a village and should listen to what people are saying. Thank you. Thank you all. What people say who are retired, they say, we did not guess that we will have to leave this position. So, as they say, memento mori. One day we have to leave these positions and we have to go back to reality. Which is not always comfortable. Thank you all participants. See you again.